Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and I will be showing you today how we can localize an ASP.NET Core application and implement localization for dynamic and static content. So, two things before we get started. We need to make sure that we have Visual Studio Community installed or Visual Studio for Mac, and the .NET SDK, .NET Core SDK is installed. So in order to check, or in order for us to download the Visual Studio community or Visual Studio for Mac, what we can do, I'm currently using a Mac, so I'm gonna take you through the process for a Mac. It should be the same thing for Windows. So let's look for Visual Studio for Mac. We can go here and as simple as clicking this download button, it will download for us Visual Studio for Mac. As I have mentioned, I have already downloaded it before, so I will not be downloading it again. The second thing is we need to download the .NET Core SDK. So once we go here, we can see from the first link, download the .NET Core. Once we click on the first link, we are gonna use the .NET 5.0, which is the latest version of .NET Core. Once we click download, we need to make sure to install it. I have already did this process. It should be as simple as clicking on installation and next, so it will be installed. So once that's done, we need to make sure that the .NET SDK has been installed successfully. So in order for us to do that, we'll need to open terminal. So on Mac, we can click on command spacebar and we can type terminal and click enter. So once we are in the terminal, what we need to do is we need to type .NET -- version, and we should see here the version of the .NET Core SDK that we have currently installed. If for any reason you do not see this version number, or it could be a higher version number or a lower version number, which is fine, but if you do not see any version number, please make sure to go through the process of re-downloading the .NET Core SDK and install it again. So once this is done, now we need to start by creating the actual application. So we're going to be using the .NET new keyword. So we'll type .NET new, and then it's going to be an MVC application. So we'll put MVC. We're going to give it a name, -n, and we'll give this sample application a name, which is going to be sample localize web. And then we're gonna specify the language. This shouldn't, it's not required, but I like to do it for consistency. So we'll put language, it's gonna be C#, as well as we're gonna give authorization none. We don't need anything, it's a sample application. So once we do that, we click on enter, and we can see here that .NET SDK has started doing the work, and it's creating the application for us. After creating the application, now we need to go to Visual Studio. I have already opened it here, and we need to go to the application and open it from Visual Studio. So we click on open, and we know the application is on the desktop. So we go here, we open it using the solution. We'll wait a few seconds until Visual Studio load the application and restore all of the packages. Once this is done, we need to go to the terminal. If you don't see the terminal right away, it should be here on the lower right hand side. So once you have that, you can just click on terminal and then you can pin it. So the first step that we need to do is we need to check where we are. So we click on ls. So we need to go to desktop here, and then we need to go to the application, which is cd called, this is a directory that I have created it in. And then from here, what we need to do is we need to build the application to make sure that it's building successfully. So the command that we're going to use is .NET build. And as we can see here, the application is being built and it has built successfully. The second thing is we need to run it to make sure that it's running as it should be. So we type .NET run, and the application is running on port 5000 for HTTP, and for HTTPS it's running on 5001. So let's open the web browser, which is going to be Chrome, and we're gonna just navigate to that URL. So I think I already have it here. Go HTTPS, and we can see the application is up and running, which is great. So let's stop it for now. And the first thing we need to do to start localizing the application is we need to edit the startup class. So on the left hand side, we can see we have a class called startup. We double click on it. Within the startup class, we have two main functions, which is the configure services as well as the configure. The first thing we're gonna do is we need to add some code to the configure services in order to add the middleware that's gonna be responsible for the localization. So beneath add controller, or let's add it before that. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add first the localization middleware. So in order to do that, we'll type services dot add localization, as well as we need to create options. So to inject which where are we gonna store the localizations. So we're gonna put options dot resource path. Sorry, it's option dot resources path, and then we're gonna give it the name resources. We're gonna create this folder later on. So that's the first thing. Forgot the R. Okay, great. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we need to add the localization to the MVC framework. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get services dot add MVC. Then we're gonna firstly add the view localization. So we're gonna add view localization, and then we're gonna define how the localization will work. So we're gonna select language, view localization expander format, and then we're gonna choose suffix. And then we're gonna choose the data annotation localization, add data annotation localization, and we're just gonna close this. So after we do this, now we're gonna configure which languages the localization will support. So in order to do that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go again services dot configure. We're gonna put the request localization option, and then we're gonna have the options created. So options, we create an anonymous function, and then the first thing is which culture are we gonna support? So we're gonna create a variable called it supported culture. And we're gonna create a new array. And within this culture, we're gonna, within this array, sorry, we're gonna define which languages. So we're gonna support English, as well as French, as well as Arabic. So once we have those, now we need to add the functions. So we need to add those culture into the options that we have created before. In order to do that, we'll go to options dot set default culture. So this is the this is the base culture that we're gonna see when the user first gonna be logging into the site. So if we set it as English, all of the support base localization will be English. So in order to do that, we're gonna do supported cultures from the array, and we're gonna choose the first one because it's already English. And then we're gonna add all of the supported cultures. It's gonna be all of the array supported culture, and lastly the add support UI culture. So this is for the views as well. Once we have those running, now we need to once we have those added, we need to update the configure services. So we'll add this before the use endpoint. And first of all, we need to create the same arrays again. I'm sure there's a way better way to create this array so we can avoid duplication. So at the moment, we're not implementing the dry format. which is okay because this is a sample application. It's not gonna go into production. So after we identify the culture, we're gonna have right now to add the localization options. So var get a variable localization options equal new request localization options. And then after that, we're gonna set the default culture. Similarly, from the array that we created before, it's gonna be the first one because it's gonna be the English loan. And then after that, we're gonna add all of the supported cultures as well as the UI culture. Add supported cultures, it's gonna be the full array. And then add the UI culture as well, it's gonna be the full array. Once we have those, we need to add it to the app, use request localization. And then we're gonna add the options that we have. And this is it from the startup side. So it should be as easy as just adding those few lines here. And so the first one is we added the localization option to our middleware. The first one is telling it where to find all of the dictionaries, which we're gonna define later on. The second one is we are identifying the supported cultures and if they're gonna be implemented within the UI as well as the code. So this is it for now, and then we're gonna go to the root, we're gonna go to the views folder. We're gonna create the drop-down list that's gonna be allow the user to switch between different cultures. So for that, we're gonna go to views. We're gonna create it under the shared. We right-click, add, new file, and we'll go to ASP.NET Core. Let's look for Razor layout, and we'll name this because it's gonna be a partial view. What we can do is we'll call it select underscore select language partial, and click on new. We don't really need any of this. It's a partial view, so we don't really need any new initialization. So the first thing what we need to do is we need to add some references. I have already prepared those on the side, so I'm just gonna copy paste them here. So these are the references that we're gonna need. And then we need to initialize all of the localization. So we need to inject all of the localization middleware that we have already initialized in the startup class. So in order to do that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add inject the iView localizer. We're gonna name it localizer. And then we're gonna inject all of the options that we have already created in the startup class. So it's gonna be add inject I options, and then we're gonna put the request localization option, the second one here, and then we're gonna name it loc options. Once we have those two ready, now we're gonna get from the context all of the supported cultures, and then we're gonna create the functionality which is gonna be handled the return URL, as well as we're gonna be creating the HTML which is gonna be responsible for the drop-down list as well as the switching. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get all of the cultures, all the requested cultures. So we're gonna create a new variable called it request culture. We're gonna get it from the context features dot get, and then we're gonna get the I request culture feature. The second thing is we're gonna get another variable which is gonna call culture item. And then we're gonna get it from the lock options that we have already identified here on line 7. So we're gonna go to lock options dot value dot supported UI cultures, and then we're gonna select from these lists. Let's create a new variable. We're gonna call it a new select list item, and it's gonna be the value it's gonna be the name. And the text, it's gonna be the display name. So it's gonna be x.display name. And we're gonna make it to a list. So right here, we just got all of the supported culture, and then we extracted the names and the display names, and we put them in a list. The third thing is we're gonna handle right now the URL redirection. So var return URL, and this is gonna make sense once we create the HTML. Dot is null or empty. We need to make sure that there is no items in the query string, which is gonna be for the context. Dot request dot path, and then we need to make sure to see if it's empty or not. Sorry. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to context dot request path dot value, and then as well we're gonna add it to all of the query strings that we have. So it's gonna be again context dot request dot query string dot value. So that way we are appending all of the full path as well as the query string. After we do that, we're gonna have to create the HTML for the drop-down lists, which gonna allow us to switch cultures. It's gonna be very easy. I have already prepared this, so I'm gonna copy paste it here, but I will explain it. So the first thing is we're just creating some styling. It's gonna be a div, and we're gonna have a nice little globe, and then the main thing is gonna be within these 5 lines. So the first thing is we're just identifying what is the culture based on the culture name that we have. So this is the localizer, and then what we're gonna do is we're requesting the culture that we have. We're checking the provider is not null. We're checking the type, and then we're injecting the name. Second is we have this form here. We're gonna create an action within a controller within the home controller after this. But here we are identifying once the user choose a different language, where is this action gonna be submitted to? So we're having a form here, and as we can see here, the controller name is home, the action name is set language, and we are injecting the return URL that we have here in case there's the user was on sub pages and we want to keep that user within those sub pages, and it's gonna be a post. Second, we have here the select. The select is very simple as well. We can see that we gave it a name as well as the main the functionality is on change. So once the user click on the drop down list and click, for example, on French, once they click on French, the form will submit itself. And we got from the requested culture all of them here, so it's going to be automatically populated by those items. It's a very simple and straightforward implementation for it. So once we have those, now we're going to inject this newly created partial view within our main layout. So let's go to the layout. Let's go to the layout, and within the main menu, let's create a new li. We'll give it a class similar to the one before. These are all template code, and we'll call it nav-item. Once we have this, all we're gonna do right now is just inject that partial view. So in order for us to inject this partial view, we're gonna put await. We're gonna await it because it's an async request. We'll put HTML dot partial async because we're gonna it's a partial view, so we need to load it asynchronously. And then we'll just input the name of the language of the partial view that we have. So it's going to be basically select language partial. So once we have this ready, and if we build to make sure that everything is still building as it should be, we should see a success message on the build process. Build succeeded, which is great. Now we're gonna run it just to make sure. It's not gonna work, but we just need to make sure that the application is still running. So we'll go to .NET Run, and now if we go to Chrome and we just refresh this link, we should see this drop down, but it's not gonna work because we didn't create the action for it. So let's stop the application again. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the controllers, home controller, and from here we're gonna add the new action. So the new action, as we have mentioned before, within the partial view, it's gonna be a post. So method post. So first we're gonna add the attribute, which is gonna be HTTP post. The second thing is we're gonna identify the action. It's gonna be a public and action result. We're gonna call it set language. And we're gonna give it 2 parameters. It's gonna be first a string, which is the culture that we want. And the second one is also a string, which is gonna be the return URL. So once we have this, right now, we're gonna use the cookie in order for us to store the user preferences when it comes to cultures. So in order for us to do that, we're gonna go to response dot cookies dot append, and we're gonna put cookie request culture provider dot default cookie name, comma. We need to add those references. So we'll go here, use Microsoft Localization, ASP.NET Localization. Then we're gonna put cookie request culture provider again, dot make cookie value. So here we're, the first one is we're getting setting up the default cookie name. The second one is we're setting actually the values. And then it's gonna be parentheses, new request culture, and then we're gonna identify which culture the user requested. Then we're gonna add some nice options to have, like when does this expire, for example, cookie options, and then we set the expiry for it, and we'll put date time offset. It's better to choose UTC now, and let's give it a month, 1 month. And then once we have this and this, we can close it. And after we do all of this, we're gonna return load redirect, local redirect return URL. So this is the one that came from the query string. It's very simple. Again, let's build it to see if everything is still running. Okay, build succeeded. The second thing is we run the application to make sure that it's running. Now we should see, once we flip through the languages, the application should also switch, and we'll see that the language has been changed. So let's refresh this, and we see, since we already defined English is gonna be our default, so as soon as we visited this page, English has been selected. Now if we select French, we can see that it has been refreshed and it's working. So now, right now, if we go, for example, again to this URL and we click enter, we can see that French is already selected, since it's already been saved in the cookies as we have identified it here, and we have added here. So right now we have added, and the entire localization is working, but we haven't really added something which is going to be localized. So how do we do that? So As you remember first, from the startup class, we have added a reference to the resource folder. And we don't have here a resource folder. So first, let's add this resource folder. So we right click here, add new folder. We'll call it resources. Something here we need to be very careful of. So basically, the resources is gonna be mimicking the layout of the views. So if we're gonna localize the view, we need to mimic the same routing that we have within the resources. So the first example that we're gonna do is we're gonna add localization to the home controller under the index page. In order for us to do that and see what is the right path, so we have views, we have home, and then we have the index. We have to follow the same exact hierarchy. So within the resource folder, we need to create a new directory, which is a new folder. We'll call it views because it's gonna be under the views folder. Within the views folder, add new folder. We're gonna call it home because it belongs to the home controller, and the view name is gonna be index. So in order for us to do that, we'll go to new file. Since we already mimicked these two here, now we need to add the actual dictionary that's gonna be handling all of the translation. So in order for us to do that, what are we gonna do? We're gonna go here on the left hand side, we have the MISC, and the third one is gonna be resource folder. The resource file. The resource file needs to match exactly the view name. So in our case right now, we have index, which is our view. So for us, we need to name the resource index.resx. So index.resources. And since it's gonna be our default one, we're gonna leave it without any language preferences. So we click new. And we can see an XML file is already created for us. So we need to repeat this step for the other two languages that we're supporting. So again, we go to home, add new file, resource file, and we'll call it index.fr for French.resx. We click on new. Similar for the Arabic one, add new file, resources, index.ar.resx, and then we click on new. Perfect. Now we have 3 XML files, and those 3 XML files represent the 3 culture: English, French, as well as Arabic. So once we have this ready, now we need to do is we need to add the actual XML format that's gonna be handling all of those translations. So in order for us to do that, what are we gonna do? So first of all, since English is gonna be our main language, so we'll go to index.resx and we'll create a new element within this XML file. We'll call it data, and we'll give it the name that we want to refer to. Let's call it for now title, and we'll see how are we going to use this title. We'll select the namespace, so we'll put XML space equal preserve. You don't really need to think about these. You can just copy paste them, and then inside this data we need to specify the value that's gonna take. Value, and we close it again. And for now, let's say the title is gonna be hello everyone in English. So that's the first thing that we're gonna have. Perfect. The second thing is what we can do is we can just copy this and then go to the French one and then add it here. And for the French, what we can do is we can say bonjour to tout le monde. So this is for the French, and for the Arabic one we do the same thing. I apologize, my keyboard is not Arabic, so I'm gonna translate it using Google Translate. We'll go to translate.google.com, English Just gonna translate these. And in Arabic, put here Arabic. Copy this and we'll just add it here. As simple as that. Great. So once we have these ready, the three of them, now we need to actually implement the localization inside the view. So we'll go to the view that we wanna localize. The first thing we need to do is we need to inject the right localization in initializers. So in order for us to do that, first we need to add the using Microsoft.asp.NetCore.mvc.localization. This will allow us to use all of the localization functionality inside this view. Second, we're gonna put using system.globalization. And third is we're gonna inject the actual localizer that we have initiated within the startup class. So inject iView localizer, and then we're gonna name it localizer. And basically this is it. So as you remember, inside the index.resx XML file, we have gave it the name title. So if we take this name title and we go to the view, and for example, after welcome, we add this at localizer, and we just give it the name of that XML variable that we have, and we click on save, and just let us build that solution again. .NET building successfully, and then .NET run. Perfect, the application is running. Let's open Chrome. And let's go back here and let's refresh this page. So as soon as we refresh, we can see that the language for French, because we have already selected French on our previous demo. Bonjour tout le monde. Now if we go to Arabic, it's gonna say مرحبا بالجميع باللغة العربية, which is gonna be like hello everyone in Arabic. And English is gonna be welcome title. So why the English didn't work? Let's check it out. So within the title, name, value, XML, preserve, hello everyone in English. Oh, sorry, we didn't save it. So let's do it again. So make sure that you save all of the files that you do over and over and over again. So now if we just refresh the English one, it should show hello everyone in English, which is perfect. Okay, great. So now what we did is we localized the view. This is considered as a static data because all of those is coming and injected directly from the view. Sorry, it's not static. These are view localization. The second part that we're gonna do right now is we're gonna be localizing through the controller side, which is also gonna be very simple. So let's go first to the controller, and let's add under the logger, we're gonna put a private read only. It's gonna be iString localizer. And since we are inside the home controller, we're gonna put home controller, and we're gonna give it the localizer name. Localizer. Okay, and now let's add the references. Okay, extension localizer, which is great. Now we need to add this to the constructor. So similarly, we're gonna put the iString localizer home controller, and we'll just name it localizer, and here we just put underscore localizer equal localizer. Now this will allow us through the dependency injection initialize the localizer function, string localizer, and inject all of what we need inside the view. So it's gonna be as simple as, let's add a new field here. So instead of title, we're gonna name this message from controller. I just copy paste the title one, and we're gonna put hello everyone from controller. So that's the English one. Make sure you save it. Now we go to the French, we add it as well, and we put bonjour tout le monde du contrôleur. And the last one is the Arabic one. We'll do the same thing. And let's leave the word controller here, and we'll just copy paste what we had before. Okay, great. Make sure everything is saved, save, or we can go to File, Save All. Great. Now we're just gonna take this name and we're gonna go back to the home controller, and under the index one, under the index action, we're gonna let's put a var. We're gonna call it localized message, and it's gonna directly take it from the localizer, and we'll give it the key that we have, and then let's send this to the view using a view data. So view data, and we'll call it this special message, and we'll just take the localizer message. Again, this is being done this way for sample purposes. So let's take this, and now let's go to the view itself inside the index, and for example here let's add an h3 for example, and we'll add the view data that we have. Once we have this, let's stop the application and let's rebuild it. .NET build. Okay, it's building. .NET run. It's running as it should be. And now let's open Chrome and refresh it to see if those matches are coming through. Perfect. Message from the controller. Is this what the message was? Let's check. So if we go to the home controller, it's called localizer, localized message from the controller. Let's go here. Is it saved? Message from the controller, French, message from the controller, Arabic, message from the controller. Okay, perfect. Save. And let's run it again. Let's go to the Arabic one, French one. Okay, why it's not working? So an easy way to do that is we can just add a breakpoint and we can run it inside the debugger and check what's going on. So once we do that, let's choose Chrome and let's run the application inside the debugger. Oh, sorry, we did something. What we did is really wrong. So the first thing that we did here, we tried to add it to the same resource folder, which was not right. What we needed to do is we need to add it to the controller resources. So in order for us to do that, what we need to do is we're gonna create a new folder here called controllers, new folder, we'll call it controllers, since we're gonna have to mimic the same structure of the controllers. And inside of the controllers folder, we're gonna create something called new file resources. We'll call it home controller.resx. So this is for the default one. Another one, new file resources. We'll call it home controller.fr.resx. And the third one is add new file. We'll call it home controller.ar.resx. So once this is ready and we click on the add, what we can do is as simple as just taking this from here. This is for the Arabic. We'll add it to the Arabic one. First, let's take the English one first. So let's take the English one. So we cut it out, save it, and we'll go here and we'll add it. And let's take the French one. We'll also take it from here, and we'll cut it and save, and we'll go to the French one and we'll add it, and let's copy all of this, and let's add this for the Arabic one. And then for the Arabic one, let's add the same message as we had before. Let's take it from here. And then after this is done here, we'll just this is the FR1, and here is the Arabic one. And we'll paste it here. Let's copy it again, sorry. And then paste, and once that, we'll add the word controller to it. And now if we build it, .NET build, once this is built, and we'll put .NET run, and now we just have to do is refresh this page, and we can see that it has already taken it from the actual file. If we go to France, it's in French, and if we go to English, it's in English. So within this small demo, we were able to first add all of the configuration that we need within the startup class for the localization. We have added 3 supported languages, English, French, and Arabic, and we have added the resource path. Secondly, we have added the layout, which is going to be a partial view, which is going to be responsible for changing the languages. Then we have added within the layout a new menu in order for us to load this partial view. And then after that, we added the resource folder, as well as we had to mimic the same structure of the views and the controller, and we added all of the resx and XML files, and we have added the right requirement for them. And after those, we have went to the view and then added the actual localizer, as well as all of what needed to be referenced to. Similarly, we added one to the controller, where inside the home controller, where we added the localizer as well, we initialize it through the constructor, and then we have loaded it and we send it through the view data. This is a very simple and straightforward way to add localization to your ASP.NET Core application. I would like to thank you very much for taking the time and watching this video. If you find it useful, please like it and subscribe, and add a comment on any of the projects that you work on, or do you like, or anything that you like me to see cover. And thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Bye.